Okay, starting. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on building talent pipelines, how adult education and employers can partner for workplace success. So glad that you're here this afternoon for this webinar with our presenter, Bryan Seck. First, a word from COABE.
Steve, I'm not sure if you're playing the video or if you'd like me to speak. I'll go ahead and say a few words while we're waiting on Steve. My name is Sharon Bonney. I'm the CEO for COABE. I'm very excited that we have Bryan Seck and Robert Breitbart here. I'm going to say a few words about Bryan as we kick this webinar off. I had the pleasure of visiting with Bryan while I was on my Invest in the Midwest West tour, and it was amazing to see the work he is doing in Lincoln, Nebraska. I was so impressed that at that time I asked him if he'd be willing to share with you all how he is building these talent pipelines. And I thought it was really incredible to see the partnerships he has. So, with that, I'm going to now turn this over to Robert, who has a few words to share, and then we're going to kick it back to Bryan, who will take us from there. Robert has been a wonderful partner to COABE, and Burlington English has been a great sponsor for many years. In fact, our very first webinars that we started in 2017, Burlington English was our sponsor. So here we are many years later. I want to thank you, Robert, for your sponsorship, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, there's nothing but joy on this webinar. Can't say enough to Sharon Bonney and to everybody who's got their hands involved with COABE and just the powerful work you do. And like Sharon, I've also had the joy of being in Lincoln, Nebraska, which if you have any reason to be anywhere in the area, you really owe yourself a treat to stop in to see Bryan's program there in Lincoln. Just fantastic. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of what you're going to hear. So I sure hope you follow up in some way, shape, or form with Bryan and what he does. It's really an amazing game changer. And I can't think of a better, obviously, intro to what I'd like to share, which is something that we've got going on that we're so excited about, and that's our your adult learners ready to work. And what you're going to hear Bryan talk about is something that we feel we can help you immensely with. And that is our Prepare for the Workplace with Burlington's Ready to Work. It's boot camp style. Really, it's something that you can infuse in anything you're doing in the ESL and beyond world. Again, to complement what you've already got going on. So this is very targeted to make sure that your learners have, are exploring careers, have got, an idea of career clusters, career ladders, employability, digital literacy, financial literacy, all in one place. It's got everything that you'd think you'd want for your instructors, your volunteers, or whomever you've got involved. So we've got in-class projectable lessons, also used extensively on Zoom, on web delivered. Of course, there's 168 hours in a week, and I want to give my learners every opportunity to maximize with their laptop, their iPad, their cell phone, whatever they've got, so learning can follow them and for truly anytime, anywhere learning. As we know, a lot of times you have incumbent workers who might be able to do their job really well, but in their native language, and they need to make that leap into English. So we've got, incredible English for specific careers. Everything, once again, you need to lay out, to get up and running with this, along with all my almost 100 Burlington colleagues in the field to help you get started. And for accountability, to be able to add at the touch of a button, monitor everything, whether showing that to the state, your workforce partners, your business partners, you've got everything in one place. So again, that's Burlington for the workplace with Burlington Ready to Work. And we'd love to hear, and please reach out. All right. And with that, I'll turn it back over to our friends at COABE and Bryan Seck. You're going to really enjoy this one. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Robert. And I'm delighted to turn things over to Bryan Seck, who is the Executive Director for Lincoln Literacy, and where he helps the team provide English and workplace skills to over 2,000 students every year. Well, Bryan, thank you so much for being with us today, and we look forward to your presentation.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Steve, Robert, and Sharon. Good to see you, even if virtually. I'll do a quick kind of introduction, and then I've got some slides to share with you. If any of you would like this information, I'm happy to share it afterwards. Or if you want to follow up with me, I'll also put my contact information in the chat. But my name is Bryan, and I get to be the executive director here at Lincoln Literacy. I moved to Lincoln, Nebraska from New York City 15 years ago almost. And I worked in consulting. I worked on the 32nd floor of a skyscraper. And I came out to Nebraska and I met my now wife and I quit. And we went on like 5 dates and got married. And this is her back here. This is a piece of art that one of our students made for me. That's my Facebook profile photo that she made. So that's pretty cool. But here at Lincoln Literacy, we've basically tripled over the last 3 years in terms of, well, everything, student attendance, vans, everything that we do. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to walk through what Lincoln Literacy does in the workplace, but also in our career navigation classes. So all of you on this call, many of whom I see chiming in on the text, I know, and I have a lot of respect for, and you guys don't need me to talk to you about ELL. We won't focus on that very much. We're really going to focus here on career pathways that we do in our Lincoln Literacy classes, and also the partnerships that we have with now 14, as of this morning, businesses that we partner with. So at Lincoln Literacy, we have this year, I think we'll cross 2,800 adult students across our entire spectrum. So at Lincoln Literacy, we have classes for adults who are pre-literate. As you know, many Burmese, Afghans, and others do not read and write in their home language. And that's a different concept than teaching English to a Ukrainian, a person from Mexico, a person from Uganda, who went to school most of their life in their home country and read and write in their home language. So we have that, and then we have an entire spectrum of English offerings. And once a person hits what we call an intermediate level, which is where they can read and write a bit, present tense, past tense, future tense, mutually understandable. We have an assessment that we follow. Once they reach that intermediate level, then they can really graduate to what we call our adult skills classes. And most of our 2,800 students take both. They continue in ELL classes and they take these career focused classes that we're going to talk about today. The other thing about Lincoln Literacy is I'm talking to you from downtown Lincoln, Nebraska, 68508. Lincoln is about 10% foreign born. Lincoln is a total population of about 300,000. And in 1975, when the Vietnam War ended, Lincoln was selected as a refugee resettlement community. That truly changed the face of our community that echoes to now. So now we have many family-owned Vietnamese businesses, but in the years since 1975, we've received refugees from all over the world. Lincoln Literacy serves people from 93 countries in 2025. Our public schools serve people from over 100. And so it's a really diverse place. And we truly teach English in English. We do not have individual classes that are language-based, because typically if we have 5 to 7 students, they're going to speak 5 to 7 different languages. And English is truly the language of communication. The way that we teach 2,800 students is we have 206 current active volunteer tutors. Which is wild. That's a lot more than we had when I started a few years ago. We've just seen crazy growth. We have a wonderful tutor coordinator, and that's her full-time role. She's Ukrainian. She was a student. She rocketed through our classes. She's brilliant. Her name's Natalia. And in fact, we have a tutor training this Thursday. And we'll have 7 or 8 new tutors, hopefully by the end of the week. That'll get started in January. So we have those volunteer tutors. We have our building here in downtown Lincoln that has 4 classrooms. These classrooms get used 6 days a week, but we also have 9 other community locations. We teach at 4 churches, 3 nonprofits, and our biggest high school lets us use now 17 classrooms in the evenings from 6 to 7:30 that happen on Mondays and Wednesdays and Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we're at the high school until 7:30 at night on those days. We also have 15-passenger vans that keep me busy in terms of maintenance and funding to make sure that those things run 6 days a week. They leave the parking lot at about 8 a.m. They get back at about 9 p.m. usually. And those are all staff who drive the vans. We also offer childcare at all of our 10 locations, including this building, and the childcare is also done by staff. Staff will also teach some of the classes that we'll talk about today. And I'll talk about kind of when we have volunteers, when we have staff doing this, because I realize that many people on this call may have purely staff teaching, purely volunteer teaching, or some mix of all of the above, like us here at Lincoln Literacy. So with that, I'll dive into kind of how we do things, and then I will also leave time for questions. And if there's not, then I'm sure Sharon can jump in, and I bet she's got one or two ready to go. If I know Sharon, she's a prepared person. So we'll see if I can share this. And I see the question from Julie, do we have individual and group classes? That's a great question, and I should have addressed that. We have a one-to-one program that includes about 40 of our 204 tutors, but the vast majority of our classes are group classes. We really save one-to-one tutoring for pretty unique situations because we have so much demand. It's demand driven. If I didn't have so many students registering every month, I would have more one-to-ones because it's wonderful. I would do that more if I could. But with demand, we really ask tutors to be willing to do group classes. If they are not willing to do that, then we'll consider a one-to-one match. I think I will share my screen if I can do that. And go. Okay. So,
Brian, it looks good. We can just see all the slides on the side. I don't know if you
oh,
want to
on the
click on
slide. Oh,
the
from
bottom
me.
and yeah,
How's that?
perfect.
Okay, thank you so much, Sharon. You would think after the pandemic and everything else, I would get this right, but here we are. Please keep those questions coming, and I'll address them, and I'll watch the clock and make sure I don't talk too long, which I've been accused of. So actually, for anyone who came to the COABE conference and came to our presentation last year in 2024, I thought it would be kind of cool to iterate on that presentation. So that for that presentation, we had one of the Kawasaki training administrators, who's one of our largest employers here in Lincoln. Every New York City subway car is made in Lincoln, Nebraska. Tell your friends, fun fact. Also make jet skis, ATVs, and other products. And full disclosure, I used to be the chief of talent management at Kawasaki, so I'm a little biased. This presentation actually builds on what we talked about at the conference. So I wanted to honor and respect those folks who came, but there's a lot of new information here too. We talked about this already, that Lincoln Literacy started in 72 and has really expanded. That's Psych on there in that photo. This is us, like we just talked about, 204 trained tutors, 120 classes a week. Classes are offered Monday through Thursday, and then Fridays and Saturdays. We actually now have classes on Sundays too. That's our building there with all of our staff, kind of a fun photo. So if you're just thinking about how is this done? We use the Best Plus for our assessment, and that's our outcome measure. We find that 78% of our students improve from registration to 6 months or every 6 months thereafter. And then we have about 58 people on staff, 18 are full-time. The vast majority are part-time childcare providers and van drivers. I actually have a new fun statistic that I don't even think Sharon knows. So of our 58 staff members, 70% are immigrants and refugees or their children, like second generation, and 60% of our staff are composed of current or former students, which is something I'm really proud of. And that extends all the way into our senior leadership team. Half of our senior leadership team are students who learned English with us and are now leaders in the organization, which I'm very proud of. I'm just really the guy who goes out and raises money and talks about what other people actually do. Which is funny as a former teacher, but here we are. So our funding, we're a $2.2 million agency. We have city, county, state, and federal funding. Some of our federal funding is likely going to go away at the end of this federal fiscal year. We are hopeful that some of this stuff will continue, but it's a bit of a dicey situation right now. I'm happy to talk about that later. I know that's not today's discussion. We have very generous individual donors. We raise about 350, 400 grand a year from individual donors. We also own our building and rent half of it to law firms. That brings in about 70K. Foundations, other forms of fundraising, and then workplace learning, like we'll talk about today. So people ask me about the funding. That's about our structure. Let's dive into this. Basically, I want to talk about two things with you today. One is our Lincoln Literacy Career Pathways, and the other is our Workplace Learning Program. So the Lincoln Literacy Pathways, these are programs that we've developed ourselves in response to student demand or outreach from employers. So I'll talk about these, and I'm happy to talk about them more in detail or any other additional questions in the question and answer period. So here in Lincoln, we're the state capital, we're the home of the university. We have major employers here. Like I said, we're a population of about 300,000. I think that context is important, and about 10% foreign born. So hospitals are one of our main drivers, our main employers. And we've reached out to our main hospital, which ironically is called Bryan Health for William Jennings Bryan, for all of you history buffs out there. But Bryan Hospital employs, oh gosh, I think that's 6,000 team members right now, something like that. And they were telling us that, like, hey, we have a lot of people who work here who were doctors in their home country, nurses in their home country. And so what we did is we developed what we call a CNA prep program that was originally funded by a foundation and now is funded by several different sources, which is kind of a cool thing. But our CNA prep program, what it does is prepares people for the class that they take at the community college. So the number one thing to think about Lincoln literacy as we begin this conversation is that we are not and will never be, as long as I work here, accredited by the Nebraska Department of Education. We are not that. We are a preparatory organization. We are a volunteer-driven organization. We do not give certificates that are beyond, like something to be proud of. So I want to lay that out very clearly. We do not compete with our community college. We feed our community college. So for our CNA prep program, what we do is we have a retired director of nursing at one of our universities who leads this, and she teaches those students at an intermediate level or above exactly what happens at our Southeast Community College, our local community college CNA class, and what to do on the exam. So she teaches to it in the same way that maybe your sons and daughters or yourselves did ACT prep or SAT prep. So we're really preparing them, our students, for the culture of the community college, and we're preparing them for the culture of American test taking, which in this case is a multiple choice fill in the bubble thing. If you've never done that before, you're going to circle the circle. You're going to X the circle. You may be confused altogether. They're going to tell you to put your pencil down, and maybe you don't do it fast enough. So we really not only teach the content of what our students need to know to be successful in the CNA class, we also teach the culture of test taking. In the last 3 years, we haven't had anybody fail. I think we're 42 for 42 at the current writing, which is really exciting. That's about a 10 to 12 week class, and then we pass those students on to the community college to take the test, and then go on to their take the class and take their licensure test. Then what we do is we'll help them find a job if they don't already work for a healthcare agency, and then we'll follow them through. We have students who are now about to graduate as licensed practical nurses, surgical techs, RNs, all kinds of different programs, many times using tuition reimbursement from their employer because they already work there. Our school jobs and para prep program, many of our adult students come to us as teachers in their home country. As you all know, a diploma from another country does not exactly mean that you get the same level of credit here. It depends on the university. It depends on 1,000 variables, which we won't dive into in detail today. But suffice to say, it's not a one-to-one type deal. However, we always try to get transcripts and diplomas from the home country translated, and if possible, accredited from an organization like World Education Services. Because what we find is oftentimes a degree from another country is worth a percentage, a proportion of a degree here in America, which saves them time and cost if they want to go back to school and get that same diploma here in the United States. So teachers are a good example. So when we're thinking about how to get a former teacher into uh, our public schools, so Lincoln, again, for context, just real briefly, Lincoln doesn't have suburbs. We ferociously annex here in Lincoln and Lancaster County. So we have one huge school district with 44,000 students, about 45% free reduced lunch, 66 buildings, 67 now. He's worked for the school district, but it's grown. Um, so it's a huge district, is what I'm trying to say here. So what we do, instead of trying to talk to a student who was a teacher and help them study for the praxis, which is the licensing exam, or go back and get their undergraduate degree right away, what we often suggest is they get a job in a school. That could be as a janitor, that could be in the lunchroom, or that could be as a paraprofessional. At our public school district, if you work more than 20 hours a week, you get full-time benefits, full-time health insurance, full eligibility for a pension, even after 5 years, all kinds of benefits. This is incredibly important in this moment, as many of our families who are legal immigrants have lost access to SNAP food stamps across the country. That was part of the Big Beautiful Bill. And also our legal immigrants, refugees, asylees, and others will lose access to Medicare, Medicaid, September 30, 2026. Also part of the Big Beautiful Bill. So when we're thinking about getting our students jobs, I believe it's also imperative to think about what are the jobs that offer benefits. And this is an amazing one that will even get it to you at part-time. All that being said, what we do is we get our students into classrooms and into schools. Schools are parochial in nature, right? Principals make a lot of the staffing decisions. So if your principal knows that there's a rock star Syrian former teacher and working in their lunchroom, they're going to think about that person as they think about the growth of their school, knowing that they have a lot of Arabic speakers, which they likely do in our district. So we communicate with our public schools HR, and then once we find out what school they're in, we reach out to the principal and say, hey, this is somebody to pay attention to. So oftentimes that person will then get promoted into a paraprofessional role, and now they're in the classroom. And I won't belabor this point because we have a lot to talk about, but I served in the Peace Corps in Kazakhstan for 3 years. And the way that teachers get to operate in other countries, I also uh, was a teacher or took classes in Spain, Russia, and other countries. Most teachers in the world don't deal with mental health concerns. They don't deal with students coming up to them talking about suicidal ideation. That's just not part of the job. You walk in, you teach the class, and you leave. So by our students learning the culture of the American classroom, they are better prepared to be educators if they so choose here in America. So that acclimation of American school culture, we find is critical for people to be successful as professionals. So anyway, the school jobs program has been hugely successful. We have a retired teacher who runs it. She's a total rock star. And we have a amazing record of success of getting our students hired into those school job roles, into paras and then on as teachers. Our CDL prep program is actually funded by our governor. Nebraska is a very red state, it's very conservative. However, it's very focused on workforce development. And his governor's team actually reached out and said, hey, we like what you do. We have grants with them. 3 different government departments at the state we have contracts with. We love what you do. We want you to build a CDL prep program. So we did. So we have a computer simulator with 3 screens. We actually have 2 of them that simulate CDL experience. We have a class that prepares people again to go to the community college and take the CDL class, or they can take kind of an accelerated private school course also. So again, we're preparing people for success. We have 3 people who've already gotten their CDLs, I think 4 in the pipeline. So it's not a huge number program, but it's one that's very impactful because here in Nebraska, an entry-level CDL driver can make about 80 to 100K a year, depending on what they do and whether they're local or over the road. Our engineer prep program works in context or in contact with our engineer association. So if we get a trained engineer, we will match them with an engineer through the engineers association here in town. And that way we can hopefully get them hired as a tech, as an associate, even if it's not as an engineer already. Our goal is to stair step people back into their careers. So once a person's ready to do that in terms of English, we'll connect them, and usually they can make a match and make a mentor through that engineer association. It's really cool. We have 6 levels of computer literacy classes from this is a mouse click all the way up to introduction to IT, where we're repairing computers and fixing some basic code problems. We find that our computer literacy classes, I'm watching the time, our computer literacy classes are actually heavily attended by our native-born students. Of our 2,800 students, just under 300 are native-born Americans working on their own literacy journey, learning reading and writing in English in their home language, but also studying for the GED. We have GED prep classes, and we also have many in our computer classes. For those of you who haven't experienced this, this is typically an adult who is an absolute ninja on their phone. They're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they know more stuff than I do, but they haven't used a desktop computer maybe since high school. They don't have one at home, they don't have one at their job, but their boss comes up to them and says, hey, we want to promote you to a patient-facing role at a hospital, or hey, we want to promote you to be a supervisor of the janitors, or whatever the case may be. And so we get a lot of students, adult native-born students who come in and take our computer literacy classes to learn the culture of writing emails. You don't write emails like text messages. This is a concept that our immigrant refugee students learn, and it's also something that we teach to native-born Americans. We're honored to be a part of everyone's journey. We work with everybody here. So those computer classes move up, and we do an assessment and then place students based on that skill level. And those 6 levels have really been driven by students telling us, hey, we want to learn this. So we create another level. Hey, we want to learn this. So we create another level. And that really creates a lot of buy-in from the students that we're letting them kind of direct the creation of classes. Most of those computer literacy classes are taught by one of our interns, who's a brilliant University of Nebraska student. I don't get to keep him forever, but we're lucky to have Bruno. We partner on financial literacy classes that are short-term. These are usually 1 to 3 classes at a time, and we almost always partner with a bank that has a banker who is at least bilingual in a language. And this is one of the few classes that will actually do a Spanish-speaking class, an Arabic-speaking class, a Vietnamese-speaking class, because the context is so technical that even advanced speakers will really trip over mortgage points. What's a point? Many of you probably know, but in Islam, interest is haram. It's against God's will. It's not utilized. In Islamic banking, you use fees instead of interest rates. So the whole concept of many things might be foreign. So this is one of our exceptions to we teach English and English rule. Ukrainian career pathways, I put that here because we had a grant that's now ended, but it really blew my mind how you think about Ukraine as a country in Western Europe, a country that's fighting a pretty heroic battle right now. But getting a job there is very different than it is in the United States. We have 2 Ukrainian staff members who led that class, and it blew my mind just how different it is to get a job here and how that works. So I list it here just because I wanted to share how much learning there was to do on the American side and the Ukrainian side to be successful in helping our students apply for jobs. The last thing I put down here is we try to apply for funding through grants to pay for scholarships for community college classes is what I mean here. All of our classes are free for our students. I should have said that. Transportation, childcare, the whole nine, it's all free. Diploma translation and accreditation. I believe very strongly that we've changed people's lives here at Lincoln Literacy, not only because of the classes that we've offered, but that we could pay the $500-600 to get their diploma accredited, translated, and then use that when they apply for jobs to apply for jobs or apply to university for classes. Okay. So here is our workplace learning program. So if any of you were tuning into this for the workplace learning program, this is it. I started at Lincoln Literacy 3 years ago. And at that time, we had a workplace learning program. However, it looks a little bit different than it does now. So here's the rules of the road at Lincoln Literacy if a workplace wants to partner with us. You will pay your employees on the clock to be in this class. Two, we need to partner with you to build a class that's relevant for your employees. When I say we start with pay, we used to do it to where an employer would say, okay, Lincoln Literacy, you can come and teach a class after shift ends for any of our employees who are interested. That doesn't work. That's the life happens. Kid gets sick. I got to take my kid to soccer practice, whatever the case may be. It needs to be during the shift on the clock or we don't get outcomes. And we're going to talk about outcomes because that's how you sell it to employers. It's not about feel good, it's about outcomes. So you're identifying a potential partner, a business. Most for us, the time for us at this point, it's mostly referrals, businesses talking to each other and word of mouth. We also have a really active Lincoln Literacy social media account on Facebook and LinkedIn that is really focused on not really fundraising necessarily. It's really focused on what are we doing out in the community? And we get a lot of businesses who hear about our class is happening in other businesses and then they want to be a part of it. So they're seeing this on social media, learning about what we're doing. A lot of our social media isn't explicitly asking for money. We do that. But a lot of it is informational. And what we find is we cultivate a lot of donors by them saying, hey, I've seen your stuff. It's really cool. You guys are doing the work. We want to donate to you. So it's kind of like a second level fundraising strategy. We work with hospitals like we talked about, manufacturing that includes metal manufacturing and food manufacturing. We actually work with a pet food manufacturer. We work with a company that makes carbon fiber gas tanks for nitrogen fuel cells. Hospitality, where we work with Marriott and construction companies also. So those are the areas that we work with. And you could also, oh, I'm sorry, I almost forgot one really important thing. If you're thinking about doing this, one of the best strategies that we stumbled upon when we first started this was to go back and look at who your students are and where do they work. Is there a company or organization like Lincoln Public Schools or utility, something like that? Look and see where your students work. And if it jumps out at you that there's 2, 3 employers, those are the ones that I would really talk to. And I would reach out to them, talk to their HR, maybe you know their leadership, and say, hey, did you know that we have 13 of your employees who take our classes right now? Here's what we can do for you. And we'll talk about how to pitch that. Let's do that now. So when you're thinking about talking to companies, what we always say is the goal here is obviously to increase productivity. That's what employers are here for. But it's also to increase safety and communication. Safety is the #1 name of the game for companies. I can tell you, having worked at a 3,000 person employer like Kawasaki, everyone cares about safety. It's the #1 thing to think about. So if we can talk to our employers about increasing safety, they're going to be listening. And so what we do is when we have a business, we'll talk to them and say, hey, what we've seen is our classes increase safety. They increase the ability of frontline workers and supervisors to be able to talk to each other. It also increases retention, so people stay longer at your company. And the last thing is we can really show pre-test and post-test what people learned, and that's your return on investment. That's your ROI. So when we have a company that's interested, we'll go out and visit them today. We actually did that this morning with an aviation company. And what we'll do is we'll sit down with their HR and with their frontline supervisors, who are the #1 most important people in the very first part of this, is to say, hey, where's the breakdown in communication? What are you not able to communicate between you and your workers, your employees, your team members who English isn't their first language? And really understanding what those barriers are is the key to creating buy-in, which is the second bullet there. You'll create buy-in from the frontline supervisors by listening to them. And then what we do is we build a curriculum specifically around the issues that they're seeing. So typically our workplace classes are 10 to 12 weeks long. It depends on how they're funded, which we'll talk about in a minute. 10 to 12 weeks long. And when we build a curriculum, it typically takes us 4 to 6 weeks. And we always build a customized curriculum based on what the business tells us. An aviation company is a very different animal, even in terms of OSHA and safety, than a metal manufacturer is than a pet food company. They're just incredibly different. So we'll really sit down and build that out. We believe that time is worth doing because that customized curriculum is in turn how you be able to have a long-term relationship with this company. So you're building in the jargon, you're building in the technical vocabulary that is unique to that organization so that the curriculum is valid for them. Um, okay, so cohorts are 10 to 12 weeks, like we talked about, 7 to 15 students per class. We find more than that probably breaks down. I bet you guys feel the same way. 60 to minute, 9 weekly sessions. If you're thinking once a week isn't enough, I agree with you, but it's the most I can get out of these businesses. It's the most time they'll give us. And so we do a pre-test and post-test based on the curriculum, and we're targeting a 20 to 25% improvement from pre-test to post-test. So that very first class, they're going to walk in and hopefully they will fail that pre-test. That's what should happen because it's based on what the business is telling us the problems are. So they don't necessarily need to know how to do that pretest. Our goal is not to break down their confidence. The goal is the opposite. But that pretest, then the teacher can go back at the end of that first class, look at the pretest, and really understand, okay, did we really hit the mark on building the curriculum? And what do people know and not know? So then that class goes on once a week for 10 to 12 weeks, 60 or 90 minutes. We do the exact same post-test again, and we should see that 20 to 25% improvement. Usually it's in the 30s. For some people, it's 100% increase. It's really pretty cool. So we track the pre and post-test on outcomes. We track the satisfaction. And then here's the other key part with the businesses. We ask them, plead with them. We cannot demand of them because they're our client in this case to track advancement, track retention, and then we get feedback from the frontline supervisors, but we can't track the advancement and retention. When you can go back to a business and say, hey, to their senior leadership, hey, we worked with HR and HR is in the room, so you can give them a compliment and say, hey, look at what we've done. The average retention rate for you is about 30%. 30% of employees make it a year. It's about right for a lot of places. What we see with our students is about 80. So you're looking at about a 2.5 time rate of return right there. And you're seeing this improvement on pre and post test. And the supervisors are saying, hey, this is helpful to us. And in that class, over the last year or so, 6 of them have been promoted. When you can show that to businesses, you all of a sudden have a recurring revenue model. So you'll be able to continue those cohorts over time and iterate on that curriculum because the business is seeing the results that they need to be successful in most of the country in a pretty tight labor market where the unemployment rates are pretty low. They want to hold on to people. They want to grow their own. And here's the other insight that we had. Businesses really, really, really want their frontline supervisors to be multilingual. And in most cases, they're not. So by you and us working with them to build those frontline supervisors that are multilingual, you're doubling up on that return on investment because retention rate goes even higher and achievement goes even higher when the frontline supervisor speaks 1, 2, or 3 of the languages that are spoken on the floor. Okay, so what? How do you get paid? The thing that we're going to think about for getting paid is 3 different ways. So the first one is WIOA. That's the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. I've been saying that for 15 years and I still get it wrong. WIOA. Title II is the Incumbent Worker Program. Incumbent is a fancy word for existing employee. Robert talked a little bit about it in his presentation. And that's what you see on the bottom right with those Kawasaki folks. Looks like they're taking a test or doing some worksheets. And so that's how we do 5 of our 13, 14 clients now. And that's partnered with your local workforce board. So in Lincoln, Nebraska, that's your Greater Lincoln Workforce Board. In Houston, that'd be your Greater Houston Area Workforce Board, whatever that case is. If you're interested in funding that way, it's talking to that workforce board. I will tell you, it's not a common way for workforce boards to spend their money. It took us a few years to talk with them and say, hey, this is a model that we can do. And I'm on the workforce board. But it's really a successful model now. And please take this invitation with 100% sincerity. If you talk to your workforce board and they're like, what? You can't use incumbent title worker funds for a nonprofit to teach English to a business. Yes, you can. It went all the way up the chain of our Nebraska Department of Labor before they blessed it, but it went all the way up the chain to the General Counsel and came all the way back, and they said we can. So that's been something we've been doing for the last 5 years. That's about 100 grand a year for us, right around there in earned revenue. The second one is the Office of Refugee Resettlement Employer Engagement Grant. That's how we work with Smart Chicken, which is a Tyson company, Walmart, which is the top right. That's Amir, who's one of our amazing teachers in the kind of khaki colored shirt. And TMCO, which is a local manufacturing company. So that's a federal grant through the Office of Refugee Resettlement. If you're thinking, isn't that stuff getting cut? That one hasn't. The Employer Engagement Grant hasn't been cut. And in theory, fingers crossed, uh, it'll open up an RFP later this year, but it was not cut in the Big Beautiful Bill. Interestingly, a lot of other ones were. So I highlight that to you as a possibility to watch out for on grants.gov. The last one, my personal favorite, is private pay, and that's where we're a vendor for a company the same as the paper company or Dr. Pepper or whatever else they buy for their business. And those are some companies, local and nationals, a couple of those that you'll recognize. Valmont Industries makes all like the irrigation equipment for farming stuff all over the world right here in Nebraska. Those are where we come to an agreement. It's usually $5,000 for a 10-week class to develop their curriculum and teach the class. All in, it's about $5,000. It can be different for different companies, but that's our point right now, our price point. So those folks are paying about $5,000 a cohort. TMCO, the manufacturing company, they do like 5 or 6 a year. Valmont does 3 or 4. Merit does 3. Hexagon does 5. Nepco does like 3. The reason I say all these numbers is every company is a little bit different. So when you're thinking about this from a budget perspective, you really want to talk with them and do a pilot cohort to really then understand, A, how many people at the company will really benefit from this? Because if it's 10, that's fine, but that means you're going to do like one cohort at a time, maybe 2 or 3 or 4, and then they might say, okay, the English is good enough, and then maybe you don't get to work with them anymore, which is fine, but you just want to really understand how big is this company, what is their level of need, and that will help you understand how long you might get to work with them. The company that we just had a meeting with this morning has about 2,600 employees, something like that. And I think there's about 40 or 50 employees who could benefit from this. So that's really cool because then we could do like a beginner cohort, intermediate cohort, start to build it out. So we might teach 2 cohorts at the same time, depending on the level of the students. And I should have said, when we're talking with the business, they identify employees who they think might benefit from this. We do an assessment, the same assessment our regular students do. It takes about 15 minutes. And then that's how we place students into classes and understand what the level is of those employees so we can have a class be effective. It doesn't have to be the exact same level. You can see that Walmart class is pretty big, but we don't want beginner students mixed with advanced students for all the reasons that you guys know as professional educators. So these are the companies that we work with. Lincoln Public Schools has done cohorts with us, which is really cool. Like we talked about, they're a big employer of immigrants and refugees here. The American Job Center is our wonderful partner. The Workforce Board, also known as the American Job Center, I should have said that. So WIOA, Workforce Investment Opportunity Act, American Job Center, your local Workforce Board, that's all one entity. Instinct, Heartland Gourmet, it's local company. Bryan Health is the hospital. And this is the last thing I wanted to close with. So Kawasaki is our biggest customer, I would say. So real briefly, that's about 3,000 employees. Like I said, there's about 50 or 60 languages on the floor at Kawasaki. So in 2021, largely Spanish speaking, long block line, build engines. It just wasn't working. And so I was working at Kawasaki at the time. We are having a really hard time with staffing. The factory needed a lot of people to open up a whole nother shift of production. It was crazy. And so the production supervisors agreed to bring in Spanish speakers. So we did that. But then they were like, oh, wait, this works. Like people can be successful and not speak English. It's crazy. And so we did that. And then actually we brought in Lincoln Literacy about that time to start an ELL pilot. So we had our first class teaching technical language, all the things that people were struggling with in communication, building these engines. So now fast forward all the way today, you can kind of go through that chart. I won't read it all to you. But now we have 6 levels of English at Kawasaki that all lead into that last box, which is Kawatech, which is basically their internal community college. And once people go through that internal community college, they will stay there for life because they're going to get promoted, which we see here. So we've had 24 cohorts at Kawasaki since 2021. 234 employees have gone through it. We've had 46 people of those get promoted. At Kawasaki, once you get promoted, you never leave. It's the retention rate's unbelievable. ATL stands for assistant team leader, quality control inspector. Production supervisors make 100 grand a year. So we have a $100,000 earner who used to be on the line, struggling to speak English. The retention rate is 80%. Kawasaki's normal retention rate is about 20. And among the foreign-born team members, it's again right there. So what I hope you see in the slide is this is the key to the CEO's heart. This is it. All the stories are great. But at the end of the day, this is what the CEO wants to see is that people are getting promoted, people are staying, people are growing, and that people feel respected. The last thing, I'll open it up to questions, is when you're framing this with businesses and you're framing this with the employees, it's really critical. And this is going to sound obvious to us as educators, but it's critical. This is not because we think you're dumb. This is because we think you're excellent and we value you here. And if your English can get even better than it is now, look at what we could do to help grow, help increase safety. You can get promoted, all of these different things. So really positioning workplace learning as a benefit, as a professional development tool, and not by accident having it be almost like a negative connotation. So I think that's it. Oh, replication and scaling, the custom curricula we talked about, cultivating contacts with businesses. We can talk about this if you want billable hours. I have to be pretty careful in developing these things to make sure that $5,000 is profitable for you as an organization. And then we always debrief, plan, and improve as we go. Kawatech, if you want to learn more about that. And then last, oh, it's just fun. These are some of the students who've gone on to be promoted. Laura Ramiro, who's the production supervisor now, he's the man. Ludmilla still takes classes with us. We can go on and on. So I'll stop here. And I'd be happy to take any questions about what we do.
Well, Bryan, I think you're the man, to be perfectly honest. We do have a number of questions, which both in the chat and in the Q&A, and I'll be happy to ask those to you. Sheila asked, are you teaching artificial intelligence to your learners?
Oh, no, not yet. Um, we've been asked about that. We find that our students already know how to use Google Translate and Google Lens most of the time, but we aren't specifically teaching it. We want our students to be able to speak naturally and in real time with their coworkers. Maybe the technology will truly get real time, but for right now, we're focused on that. And then if we went into a tube breakdown, we'll cheat and use Google Translate or something like that.
Okay, thank you. Tim asked, could you say more about which federal funds you use and also what type of flexibility do you have when providing services through federal funding?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, yeah, and then Tim, I did mistake. So, which is Title One. So, Incumbent Workers Title One, not Title Two. That's a mistake on the PowerPoint. So, yes, incumbent, ignore the titles because I screwed that up. That's on me. Incumbent worker funds is where that comes from through the Workforce Board. So the flexibility with federal funds depends on the grant. With the Workforce Board, with the WIOA grants, the pre and post tests are the name of the game because that's what's required. And then we have to have a certain number of students complete the class in order to fulfill the contract. For the employer engagement program through the Office of Refugee Resettlement, that one is more flexible. It has less data requirements, but we basically do the same things in terms of assessment. But WIOA tends to be a little bit tighter on requirements than the employer engagement program. The employer engagement program is more almost like introductory, almost. It just has less requirements around it, I guess.
Question from Sheila Snyder. 4 to 6 weeks to build curricula is impressive. Who does that work?
Staff. So we have five full-time staff members in the adult skills area that develop that curriculum. It is impressive. They are very talented. And what I would say about that is it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't. It does not have to be a book that's going to be published by Burlington English. Shout out to Robert. This isn't that. This is listening to what the frontline supervisors and the HR are saying are the issues and attacking the issues. So while it is absolutely developing curriculum, you're not developing something that is so detailed that it should take forever. It should be something that's almost rough and ready to go. And then you're going to sit down with your students, and all of us who work with adult learners know they're going to give you feedback. They're going to be like, actually, no, that's not what we call it. No, that's not right. And they'll talk to you about it. So I would just say we have wonderful staff members who make this happen, but I really encourage them. Don't spend too much time. Listen to what the business is saying and let's fix the issue. Because if we fix the issue, we get to do this more and we get to grow with our students.
Several questions about pre and post assessments that you're using. Which ones are you using? I guess is the biggest question.
The curriculum. So we develop the curriculum and then we develop the pre and post. It's the same thing. So each company has a unique pre and post test based on the curriculum that we develop from the issues that we heard. So like we talked about, that pre-test should be terrible. People should be getting like 17% or less because it's testing the things that the employer is telling us are the problem. And then by the end of it, we should have addressed those things. So it's a custom pre and post test each time.
So, other questions. How do you get employers involved? This is Carol says this has been my biggest barrier.
Yeah, you need a champion. That's the honest answer. Going to Chamber of Commerce meetings, going to Rotary meetings, going to different things, talking to businesses. I would say though the cheat sheet, in my opinion, to get your first one or two is to look at the employers of your students. Where do your students work? And then let that be your first target because when you're speaking to a business about their own employees, that's a whole nother thing than trying to cold call somebody. And I think there was a question in there. Those are all paid instructors who teach our workplace classes. Volunteers don't do those. Those are all paid instructors, of which we have the five or six. It's the same people who develop their curriculum and teach the classes. So we have 5 or 6 staff who do that.
Question from Caitlin. When you say childcare is done by staff, what do you mean? How does the program handle the ins and outs of childcare, like liability, etc.?
Sure. It's not technically childcare is the answer. In the state of Nebraska, it's technically child minding, which is another word for babysitting. So if you are offering child minding in the state of Nebraska, what that means is the parent is in the same building as the child. It is child care if the parent leaves that premises. So we call it child care because no one knows what child minding means. Child minding, and that gets us away from a lot of the licensing requirements that are there across the country. So we kind of run under the radar through child minding because the parent's on site, and those are taught by staff members.
A question related to that, how do you afford the childcare?
How do we afford it? Because I raise money like a madman all the time. My job is to get money. So yeah, no. If we're talking about childcare for ELL classes, so if workplace classes, we don't deal with childcare because they're at work. If we're talking about our ELL program for childcare, yeah, it's expensive, but our students are 68% female, And if we didn't offer childcare and transportation, they couldn't come to class. The classic story is you have a mom, dad, 3 or 4 kids. The older kids go to school. If they have a car, dad takes the car to work, and mom's stuck at home with 5-year-olds or less. And those are the students that we mostly transport back and forth in our vans.
See, Margie has a follow-up. Is the child minding like a family literacy program where the children are doing homework while parents are in class? Is there an age range for the children?
Good question. It's not family literacy. No, that's not our game. Our public school district does family literacy, so we don't compete with that. So no, the children are in a separate room from the parents. They're doing educational type things, but the class and the children are separate. We don't have a formal age range. We rarely see kids past 7 or 8, um, because they're mostly likely going to be at home babysitting their brothers and sisters, but we don't have a formal piece to that.
Question from Beth. How do you build the buy-in for employers? And how are you able to get employers to provide the classes during paid work time? This is something we have not been able to do.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Um, the first answer is track record, and I realize that you have to get one first. But when I talk with a business and I say Kawasaki does this, Bryan Health does this, the Marriott does this, which are some of our biggest employers, they're like, oh, all right then. But if I was trying to sell this for the first time, I think what I would say is, you know, what are the issues that you're having between your employees and the customers? At the hotel, our entire workplace training program at the hotel is 100% dialogue based between the hotel worker and the staff member and the hotel worker and the guest. That's it. That's all we're teaching is communication and safety, chemicals and stuff like that. So really it's hopefully the business is telling you they're having a difficulty and you're saying, hey, I have a remedy for this. It's adult education.
Question from Caitlin. Do you have a working agreement with the workplace regarding expectations of building the class, being in class, getting employees to class, etc.?
Yeah, excellent question. It's always interesting what you decide to like take in and put out of the presentation. I had that in there and I took it out. So yes, so for the WIOA funding, you absolutely have explicit contracts that are drawn up by your workforce board with expectations around the business will have those people there on site on the clock. That we're going to have a certain number of people who graduate from the class because of course there's attrition, right? People quit, people leave, pregnancy, all the things that happen in real life. So that's on the WIOA side. On the private pay side, we draw up like an MOU, like a memorandum of understanding based on whatever we agreed on. $5,000 for a cohort. We're going to run it 12 weeks. The employees need to be made available during those times. They're going to be paid for those times. All of those things happen either a Lincoln Literacy style memorandum of understanding or something drawn up by the workforce board, depending on which funding model we're using.
Other question, how can a program focused on GED preparation or English grammar instruction start transitioning toward a model like yours that incorporates workplace readiness, digital literacy, and financial literacy? And follow up with that is where did you start to get to this place now with 14 employers?
Uh, we saw the writing on the wall and we reacted to it. So we want to have as many funding buckets as we possibly can to be as least dependent on any one funding bucket as humanly possible. So that way, if we lose one, it's not a killer. So the workplace learning, those 14 businesses, those are 3 different buckets right there: private pay, employer engagement, and WIOA. And then we have all the different other funding mechanisms also. I would say if you want to get into this universe, I would say find one that pays first. Like financial literacy is fine, but that's more like a partnership feel good with the banks. I would find one that pays. Find one working with your school district. Your school district is likely to be one of your biggest employers, even in rural communities. I grew up partly in Garden City, Kansas, out west, near the Colorado border. Your school district is going to be big. There's going to be some kind of manufacturing. Those are the places that I would look at first. But again, I would really go back to your very first step is figure out where your students work, and let that be your first stop.
Kim Olson asks, how do you determine which employers get the services for free versus those who are charged a fee?
Oh man, how much time do we have? Um, so the employer engagement grant provides those classes through that grant, right? Um, Actually, let me take a step back. Most of the businesses that do private pay do it because they don't want to mess with the paperwork of a grant. That's the honest answer. That's the first answer. A lot of these businesses, they want to go fast. They want to do it right now. Let's go. Our workforce board only takes incumbent worker program applications in April of every year. So if you want to participate in WIOA, you got to wait until the next cycle. And a lot of businesses, they want to go now. So then they'll do that. And maybe we'll do one or two cohorts with them. And then they might apply for WIOA. So honestly, it depends on the company. And it depends on their level of appetite for paperwork because the government grants just have more paperwork to them than private pay. Because private pay, that's it. You're just a vendor. Like there's no reporting to any kind of government agency, obviously.
Another question was, you mentioned using Title II funds for Kawasaki, et cetera, and you also talked about using incumbent worker funds, which is Title I. Are you using both Title I and II funding for the same employer?
No, that was the typo from earlier. That's my fault. Incumbent worker grant is what we use for Kawasaki, Heartland Gourmet, Bryan Health, Lincoln Public Schools, and Instinct Pet Food. That's my typo. So incumbent worker, WIOA, my fault. I get the titles mixed up. That's my fault.
Yeah, no worries. Easy to do. Christian asks, can you speak more to the requirements employers put in place to establish the partnership slash pipeline?
Yeah, sure. So what employers want is safety, safety, and productivity. Employers fear accidents mightily. There's huge consequences to safety beyond the person actually getting hurt is the first thing, but there's consequences for the entire company. And so that's what they're really focused on. So I would say their requirement is they want to improve safety and productivity. And then how are you addressing that need is the way that you build that. And then your curriculum, you show it to them and say, hey, this is what we created based on what you told us. If we teach this, does this help to solve this issue? Hopefully they'll be like, oh my gosh, yes, this is exactly what we talked about. You're going to teach how to do it. And then again, at the end of the 10 or 12 weeks, you're going to do that post test and you're really going to see the incredible amount of learning that people experience. One thing I'd just like to say before we close is I think we're really talented teachers at Lincoln Literacy, and I'm very proud of what we do. And I think it's 50%. 50% is teaching. The other 50% is building confidence among our adult learners about what they already know. They already understand so much. They just don't have the confidence to get it out. And so much of what we're doing is we're giving people that space and permission to be able to screw up when they speak. 'Cause maybe they're intimidated to talk to their supervisor. But by giving them the 50% knowledge, 50% confidence, to us, that's the game.
Cole asks, do you find that the issues are mostly with verbal communication, or are there any issues with written language that are addressed? We do similar work, and I'm curious.
All of the above. Oh yeah, it's just everything. Sometimes you're going to have pre-literate folks mixed in with people who are able to read and write. That makes it a little bit harder. But to answer your question, it's everything. It's reading and writing, and then also spoken.
And let's see, one last question from Christian is, are you setting benchmarks monthly for placement or students achieving promotions?
Ooh, good question. No. but we should. We usually if we do a cohort for 10 or 12 weeks, when it ends, we'll do like a meeting with HR and the supervisors say, hey, that this is what we accomplished. Hey, do you feel that anybody is going to be ready for promotion soon? And then usually we'll follow up with them a month or two after the class ends or into the next cohort, depending on what's happening, to see if somebody's been promoted. But that's truly all relationship building and building that relationship between you, the education agency, and the business, usually the HR person or training manager. Because when they see you as a partner and you email them and call them and say, hey, did anybody get promoted? They're going to be excited to tell you and not annoyed that you're bothering them. But tracking those promotions is unbelievably helpful when you're talking to the leadership that signs off on that budget requisition.
Well, Bryan, thank you so much. Amazing presentation. Thank you for the answer to all the questions. One more ask is, would you mind putting your contact information in the
Oh
chat?
yeah,
Several folks
definitely.
asked how they could get in touch with you. And we really appreciate you doing our webinar today. Robert, we also thank Burlington English for being the sponsor for today's webinar. Would you like to make any other comments, please?
Just I hope we see Bryan on a regular basis. Hope he gets his own YouTube channel. There's just not enough. There's great things that you can hear all over the place on theory, but when you can actually have somebody in the trenches doing it with success, I think we can't get enough of what Lincoln Literacy is doing. And if you, by any chance, if you don't happen to have all the blessings and resources and staff at your disposal to create things that Bryan's talked about, just know we've got a huge portion of that students can, learners can take anywhere. And I love this entire field of diversifying, what's our July 2026 plan for funding for those that are so dependent on WIOA Title II. And so I think all of these things are fantastic ideas, and we at Burlington would love to help. So thank you, Bryan. Thank you to COABE and all your hard, heavy lifting, Steve and Sharon and everybody.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you so much.
well, thank you so much, Bryan and Robert. And we'll close our session today with a brief word from COABE.